Hi, I'm Mike Rignetta. This is Crash Course Mythology. Last week, we looked at Jewish, Christian, Zoroastrian, and Islamic apocalypse myths, and today we're going to look at one apocalypse myth, one we've all been waiting for. The battle for the ages, the war to end all, the inspiration for no fewer than 11 metal bands, according to Encyclopedia Metallum. That's right, it's the Norse apocalypse, Ragnarok. Battles, earthquakes, fire, blood, a giant wolf, groaning dwarves, and Loki, who is the worst. That is, until he's not, because he dies. Oh, spoiler alert! In many versions of the Norse myths, Ragnarok is the conclusion of one Loki story that we've already covered. You might remember a few weeks ago when we talked about the beloved god Balder and his brother Hoder, how Loki tricked Hoder into killing Balder by throwing a dart made of mistletoe, and then Loki disguises himself as a stubborn frost giant lady in order to prevent Balder from escaping the underworld. Ugh. The nerve. That's where we left the story last time, and while Loki may have succeeded in getting rid of Balder, his pleasure is short-lived. When the rest of the Aesir, the Norse gods of the sky, figure out they've been duped, they fly into various rages, Loki gets scared, and poof, Amscray's out of Asgard way. The rest of the Aesir form a posse to bring Loki to justice. Loki decides to hide out in a cave near Franang's Falls. If anyone comes by, he can just transform himself into a salmon and hide in the churning water at the bottom of the waterfall. And sure enough, the Aesir posse shows up, Loki turns into a fish, and dives for safety. This is when Kvasir, the wisest of all the Aesir, pulls a Sherlock Holmes and notices a burned fish net in the remains of Loki's fire. Fish, he says to himself. Why would Loki be thinking about fish? So the gods make a new net, Thor uses it to drag the nearby water, and Loki is caught. The Aesir decide to not kill Loki, but to punish him, and boy, do they ever. First, they find Vali and transform him into a wolf. Then, Wolf Vali eats Loki's son, Narvi. Then, the gods take Narvi's entrails and use them to tie down Loki inside a cave while Skadi, goddess of skiing, hangs a snake from a stalactite above Loki's head, positioned so its venom will drop, bit by bit, right onto Loki's face. For eternity. Somehow, Loki's wife Sigyn arranges to stay with her husband, where she sits and uses a wooden bowl to catch the snake venom. But even so, whenever she gets up to empty the bowl, a few drops land right on Loki's face. Rinse and repeat, except with snake venom for eternity. Or, as Crossley Holland put it, that is how things are and how things will remain until Ragnarok. This is actually where the timing gets a little complicated. The story of Ragnarok is obviously very old, but it was originally told as a prediction. This is how the world will end later. In theory, Loki is still tied up in that cave somewhere, like right now, trying to get snake venom off of his face. So the Ragnarok myth, it's less a story of something that already occurred and more like a script for something that's yet to come. According to myth, we'll know that Ragnarok is nigh because first we'll have Fimbulvinter, 3 long winters all in a row. Cold, bitter, unending winters that make people hungry and then hangry and then fight and kill each other. Brothers killing brothers, sisters killing sisters, whole families turning against one another, like when you're on vacation and everyone skips lunch. Civilization crumbles. Buildings are destroyed through war and neglect, humanity itself deteriorates, and people become like wolves to each other. And then, when nearly all of the people have killed each other, and those who are alive are acting like beasts, the mythological wolves Skoll and Hati will come out and eat the sun and the moon. The stars will fade, and everything will go dark and cold, and there will definitely be no more smorgasbords. Boy, Norse, howdy, things haven't even gotten going yet, because now the earthquakes begin. We've talked about apocalyptic earthquakes before, the kind that topple trees and crumble mountains, but these earthquakes will also cause the earth itself to shift. And guess what? To break the bonds keeping Loki and his giant monster wolf son Fenrir in captivity. And once Loki is free, the myth tells us, 3 roosters will crow, waking the giants, the warriors of Valhalla, and the dead of single hockey stick hell, the place. Meanwhile, Loki's other son, Jormungand, the Midgard serpent, will churn through the seas as he heads toward the plain of Vigridir. Newly free and awake, Loki will lead his monstrous sons and all the minions of Hel to march on Asgard and challenge the Aesir. He'll be joined by the giants, led by Surtur, who carries a flaming sword. As this terrible force marches across the Bifrost towards Asgard, the great Rainbow Bridge will collapse behind them. Heimdall, who sees further than any other god, will spot Loki coming and sound the Gjallarhorn in warning. The Allfather, Odin, seeing the impending battle, will turn to his trusted advisor Mimir for advice. But when giants are marching, and your rainbow bridge is in pieces, and Fenrir and the Midgard serpent are loose, a pep talk isn't really gonna help. And so the Aesir will gear up for battle alongside the Einherjar, 800 of the most honorable dead warriors from Valhalla. The Aesir and the Einherjar will follow Odin to the plain of Vigridir to face Loki's onslaught, perhaps best dealt with in the thought bubble. The battle begins and quickly turns into a collection of heroic duels. The fight doesn't go well for anyone. Tyr and Garm kill each other in battle. Thor defeats Jormungand, but not before the dying serpent spews venom all over the thunder god and Thor falls, poisoned. Even Loki and Heimdall fight so savagely that they slay each other, which I guess means someone else will have to be the worst now? Anyone have any nominations? As for Odin, he attacks with his mighty spear, Gungnir, but Fenrir seizes Odin in his mighty jaws and swallows the Allfather. With Odin consumed, an unlikely hero arises, Odin's son, Vidar, and his great magic shoe. Vidar's mythical shoe is made up of all of the thrown away scraps of all of the shoes that have been made since the beginning of time. It is huge and indestructible. And so Vidar stomps his mythic shoe down on Fenrir's bottom jaw, grabs the wolf's top jaw, and rips his head apart, guitar solo. The end of the battle comes when Surtur, leader of the giants, finally defeats Freyr. He turns and with his flaming sword sets all the worlds ablaze. According to one version of the story, Asgard and Midgard and Jotunheim and Niflheim will become furnaces, places of raging flame, swirling smoke, ashes, only ashes. The Einherjar will die, men and women and children in Midgard will die, elves and dwarves will die, giants will die, monsters and creatures of the underworld will die, birds and animals will die, the sun will be dark, and there will be no stars in the sky. The earth will sink into the sea. Thank you, Thought Bubble. Okay, so look, Ragnarok doesn't end well. The world has been destroyed by flames, and all the people and all the gods are dead, and everything is darkness. Except, in this end of the world story, there is a silver lining. Because the worlds are consumed by flames, what remains is water. And as we've seen in creation stories, water has pretty impressive generative powers. Accordingly, the earth will rise again out of the water, fair and green. The eagle will fly over cataracts, swoop into the thunder, and catch fish under crags. Corn will ripen in fields that were never sown. But hold on, it gets even better. It turns out that not all of the gods perish in the massive inferno. Odin's sons, Vidar and Vali, and Thor's sons, Magni and Modi, survive the fire. They make their way to the plain of Idavall, where they're joined by Balder and Hodor, who have come back from the world of the dead. Haenir and the children of Vili and Ve round out a new pantheon. The best part is what happens when these new gods gather together. They sit down and they talk, telling the stories that only they know. The same stories of the Norse gods that we're talking about right now. In the grass of Idavall, they find some of the treasures of the Aesir, including Mjolnir and special golden chessboards and their pieces. In a recent retelling of the Ragnarok story by Neil Gaiman, these pieces are the characters from the myths, Loki and his children, the frost giants, and Surtur. Gaiman ends the story writing, "Balder will smile like the sun coming out and reach down, and he will move his first piece." There's a lot to unpack in the Ragnarok myth, starting with whether or not it's really a reflection of the pre-Christian Germanic tradition. You probably noticed a lot of similarities between the Christian story of the apocalypse, from the blowing of the horns to the earthquake and the fire. But more importantly, the most beautiful and beloved of the gods, in this case Balder, returns from the dead. Our main sources for this story, the Eddas, were written down well after Christianity became dominant in Northern Europe and Iceland. Were the original myths influenced by Christianity? Well, It depends upon which scholar you ask. Interestingly, unlike some of the other apocalypses, this one is a beginning as well as an end. The Christian and Zoroastrian stories also establish the beginning of a new age, but Ragnarok, even though it's clearly set in the future, prefigures a renewed world that looks a lot like the old one. In Gaiman's retelling, we almost have the feeling that Ragnarok has happened, even if we're specifically told its events are in the future. The idea that the end of the world can also be the beginning of the world isn't unique, though. In Hindu mythology, the Fourth Age, also known as the Kali Age, sees humans afflicted by corrupt rulers and all the social order upended. As in the Norse story, the world will be consumed first by drought and then by fire, followed by a storm lasting many years, and the rebirth of a new world here on Earth. The cyclical nature of the Hindu myth, as well as the twisting of time, is expressed this way. A day of Brahma, born from the lotus, lasts 1,000 periods of 4 ages. A night, when the world is destroyed and made into a vast ocean, is of the same length. And at the end of the night, Vishnu, unborn, having awakened, takes the form of Brahma in order to create, as it has already been told to you. This Indian apocalypse story and Ragnarok are both oddly hopeful. They explain that destruction is necessary for creation. Unlike the apocalypse of the Bible's Book of Revelation, they don't promise a new world only for the righteous, but a rebirth for everyone. You get a rebirth, and you get a rebirth, and you get a rebirth. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Check out our Crash Course Mythology tote bag, and poster, available now at dftba.com. Crash Course Mythology is filmed in the Chad and Stacy Emigoltz studio in Indianapolis, Indiana, and is produced with the help of all these nice people. Our animation team is Fox Cafe, and Crash Course exists thanks to the generous support of our patrons at Patreon. Patreon is a voluntary subscription service where you can support the content you love through a monthly donation to help keep Crash Course free for everyone, forever. Crash Course is made with Adobe Creative Cloud. Check the description for a link to a free trial. Thanks for watching, and related but unrelated, one of those 11 Ragnarok bands is a flute metal band.